Being Maronite means belonging to a church rooted in perseverance and faith. For over 1,500 years, the Maronite have remained faithful to Christ and to Rome, even in times of persecution, isolation, and war. From the mountains of Lebanon, our ancestors protected their faith and, most importantly, their freedom and identity through all hardship.
Welcome to the Break the Silence podcast, brought to you by Aid to the Church in Need, the Catholic charity helping persecuted and other suffering Christians worldwide. In addition to providing aid, we are also dedicated to sharing stories of faith and resilience from around the globe. I'm Amy Balog, the marketing executive at ACN UK. I recently returned from a wonderful trip to Lebanon, and I'm joined by Marielle Boutros, ACN's project coordinator for Lebanon and Syria, who I spent 5 days with, traveling around and asking lots of questions, trying to understand a very complex history and political situation. Hi, Marielle. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
It was my first time in the country, and it was really so lovely traveling with you and meeting so many incredible people with deeply moving stories. I expected to find a church crushed by conflict, war, and destruction, but I have to say that's not what I found at all. It was such a blessing to encounter such a vibrant Christian community, very much alive with hope and love and rooted in faith, in a faith that endures despite decades of hardship. That was really the feeling I got. And during our trip, quite a few people quoted Pope St. John Paul II, who once wrote that Lebanon is more than a country, it is a message. What do you think he meant by that?
This is a very important quote in Lebanon nowadays, and it has been for the past 10 years, I guess, because to consider a person or a community or even a mission as a message in our church means that this entity is helping to bring the people together, or to bring the people closer to the voice of God in the middle of many distractions. And the Lebanese cultural and the religious mosaic has always been a funding experience of coexistence. In the world in the world's most critical area, which is the Middle East. So for centuries, Christians and Muslims have been living side by side, despite political challenges and whatever the country is going through in Lebanon. So the message of Lebanon, this message that St. John Paul II wanted to tell the world about, is how to really live Christianity, really live the core meaning of being Christian in a place where you have many challenges, where you have many problems on a daily basis, yet being able to live the gospel, to be the light and the salt of the earth, and build peace among different people.
Do you see this message alive in your daily work, and if so, in what ways?
Yes. With a bold yes. The message is clearly alive today. In many places, I can take, for example, the past war that happened in Lebanon. It was in September, October, and part of November also in Lebanon. And this war was, the result was 1 million displaced people. And all of these people were coming from different denominations, and were not all of them Christians. In contrary, most of them were Muslim. Yet you could see that the churches opened their doors, the retreat houses, the presbyteries, the church itself. So they opened the doors and they welcomed the people to live the gospel, to live the true meaning of being Christian, to see that other person as a human being, as Christ himself being displaced. So this is one example. We have many other examples. For example, Catholic schools in Lebanon. This is a place where you can see coexistence in a really a clear way, because this place where children coming from many denominations can live together, coexist, learn on the same school benches, and having the same level of education, and at the same time they are taught Christian values, and they are taught catechesis, and they are living on a daily basis without really conflicts within one another. This is why the Catholic Church, the Catholic schools are very important in Lebanon. So these are two examples, but we have many others also.
And both of those examples you mentioned are so very important, and they reminded me of some of the people, the very special people we met during our trip. So maybe we could just briefly tell their stories. But I just wanted to say to the listeners, you know, those of you who don't know, Lebanon's population is estimated to be around 5 million people. And you said that around 1 million were displaced. So 1 in 5 people, something like that. So it's really significant, really disruptive to the basic everyday functioning of the entire country. So the first example you gave was Christians opening their doors and accommodating refugees, people displaced by the war, by the airstrikes. And as you said, many of those who had to flee because of the airstrikes were of different faiths. And we spent quite a lot of time in the Bekaa Valley, which is honestly one of the most beautiful landscape I've ever seen. It was majestic mountains lining this stunning valley. And we visited various religious communities throughout the valley whose monasteries are overlooking the fields. And they said to us that they could actually, from their windows, in many cases, see the airstrikes, see the rockets landing in various places throughout the valley. But because the sites targeted by the airstrikes were Hezbollah bases, it means that they were located in Shia majority areas. So many of the people fleeing were Shia Muslims. And one lady in particular we met, who I'll never forget, was this old lady, a widow, called Nadaf. And it really was such a very deeply moving experience, because I saw this frail old lady on her own, and the faith and the love she was radiating was really unbelievable. And she was telling us how one day a car parked outside her house, and she went and gave the people something to eat, something to drink, and then another car came, then another car. And she ended up taking in 3 families to her home, 12 people in total. And 2 of the 12 people were actually pregnant women. One of them gave birth during that time, which means that it was 13 people in total in the end who she was looking after, giving them food and also giving them clothes, because these families left in a panic, carrying not many personal belongings. And I remember one of us asking her if she felt afraid at any point during that time, because she was sharing her home with complete strangers. She didn't know who these people were. They could have been associated with Hezbollah. I mean, she herself could have become a target. She didn't know who they were. And one of us asked her if she felt afraid at any point. And I will never forget her response when she said that I only did what Christ told me to do in the Gospels. And then she added that the courage to do it came from the Virgin Mary. And this is just one of many examples of people really living the faith. Believing is one thing, but really living the faith, living the gospel in their everyday lives. And you must see this in your daily work. In a way, you see a lot of suffering, but it must be such a blessing, isn't it, to encounter all these people daily?
It is. It is such a blessing because what the people have endured in the past, not only 1 year, it's been since 2019 that the people are enduring harsh times. People who had saved money for their retirement, they lost everything. These are technically old people who cannot work anymore. You can see people losing their belongings. People who cannot afford to put their children in schools. People who send their children with a loaf of bread, an empty loaf of bread, to school because they can't afford to pay fillings for the bread, or even the parents cutting on 1 or 2 meals to secure meals for their children. We've seen a lot. We've seen a lot in Lebanon in the past few years. But there is something. There is this faith, this strong faith that the people have, and I honestly learn from this faith on a daily basis. Maybe I'm more fortunate than the majority of the people, but you can see that they put their struggle in the hands of the Lord. They say, we put this with the Lord. This is our cross. We will hold the cross and walk. We go to Virgin Mary. For example, people cannot afford sometimes transportation from their house to their workplace. Yet you can see them in May taking whatever transport they can get to go to the Marian shrine in Harissa in Lebanon to have this time with the family, to put everything in the hands of the Lord. And this faith that we inherited from our ancestors, our ancestors who were persecuted and who were really escaping from one place to another at a certain time. We inherited this faith and being strong in faith. I don't know if it's something that we could say, but at least here we say he's strong in his faith, and this is what gives us strength. And seeing that the church is here right with us, beside the people, carrying the struggles with the people, and telling the faithful that I'm with you. If we have food, we share. If we don't have, we share the least we have, we will share with you. And it was really clear, and it is still clear nowadays in Lebanon. You can see that the church is here. It's a rock, strongholds where the Christians, despite everything, they can feel that this rock they can lean on. They have this thing where they lean on the church. So.
And ACN has provided emergency aid to Christians displaced or Christians whose homes have been destroyed, but also people like Nadav, this widow I told you about, who, for her to be able to feed these displaced people, she relied on ACN's help as well. So could you maybe say a bit about how the church's role changes in times of crisis and war, and what ACN especially can do to help in these desperate situations?
The role of the church has always been depending on the situation. Before the crisis, the church had many institutions. The church still has many institutions. But it's really, the church had Catholic schools, Catholic universities, hospitals, charitable institutions. The church is very present to serve the people and to do what sometimes the state cannot do. And whenever there's a crisis, whenever there's a challenge, we say in French, on met la main à la pâte. The church puts the hand in the dough and doesn't leave the people like that with nothing. in the past, in the previous war, the church was already struggling to pay salaries, to sustain the institutions, the many institutions she has. And then came the last war, and you could see that the church didn't ask the question twice: should we help or shouldn't we help? It was, we should help. Let's open our doors. Let's bring in these people. Let's see our people, what they need. And it was really a sort of a miracle, because you could see this church. The church is tired. The people are tired in Lebanon. It hasn't been 2 months that we have the crisis. It's now almost 6 years that we have the crisis. So the church is really tired. And yet you could see the people smiling, the sisters doing face painting for the children, or cooking side by side with the displaced people to give the food to the other people. So you could see that. And what ACN did, it was like an emergency program for the war, where we supported some projects in south of Lebanon and in the Bekaa, to help the church do the mission she has to do, to help the church stay on its foot, stay firm. And we had also some other projects in other areas, not only in the south and in the Bekaa, because displaced people were all around Lebanon, and the churches opened their doors everywhere. And it was, in fact, to sustain the church, to keep the church alive. And also we have a project with the schools, the Catholic schools, where we have we have to support children or families who cannot pay their tuition fees, and help the schools also to function by securing the tuition fees of these families who cannot pay. Also, during the war, we had a special project to support the teachers, because the schools in the south of Lebanon were all operating online and keeping up, but at the same time they didn't have any income, and the teachers were doing their jobs, and they needed to pay something. The schools needed to pay something at the end, and it was one of the projects where we had the school pay like a small stipend to the teachers, not the whole salary, of course, but just to keep them running.
I mentioned, and also you have mentioned repeatedly, the strength of people's faith. You know, for those listeners who haven't been to Lebanon, this is not something that we're just saying. You know, seeing especially people's devotion to the Virgin Mary and to Saint Charbel, seeing faith in action and people's trust in God in such a real way, it's something that has really helped me deepen my faith on a very personal level as well. And also listening to people trying to understand what their Maronite identity really means to them. So could you say a little bit about what the Maronite church, the Maronite identity means to you personally?
Yes. Being Maronite means belonging to a church rooted in perseverance and faith. For over 1,500 years, the Maronite have remained faithful to Christ and to Rome, even in times of persecution, isolation, and war. From the mountains of Lebanon, our ancestors protected their faith, and most importantly, their freedom and identity through all hardship, famine, exile, invasions, everything. And as a Maronite Catholic, I see that I am called to a special mission, which is to carry the story of the Oriental Church that has survived against odds, against everything, and continue today to witness a changing world in this land, as well as abroad, because we have a big diaspora. We are called to be a sign of peace and hope, and coexisting and creating these bonds to mark our life. it's not only about being Maronite, but also about being Middle Eastern, because the resilience in the Middle East, it has a really special meaning, because we think that it was lived by Christ himself. If we can, if we take like a look from a far angle, at the end, Jesus lived here in this land. He walked through these places. He drank the water we are drinking. He enjoyed the same weather we have. And also he suffered from occupation, from persecution, and everything we are facing today. So our challenges and problems are not new. These are, they are almost the same as the same struggles that Christ experienced, and we are now sharing these struggles with him. So today we know that he is carrying the cross with us. We are not alone in this. He knows the burden. He knows what we are living, and we are not living alone. Dieu est fidèle. This is a sentence that I like. God is faithful. And we believe in this. We believe that he's sharing this history with us.
And again, it is more than just believing, as important as believing and faith is. As you say, people are actually living it. They are living the faith. They are living the gospel in very tangible ways. And I have to say that as we were traveling throughout Lebanon, I kept thinking exactly about how Jesus himself used to walk in those lands. I constantly had this sense that there was something sacred about the land, And one way of thinking about it is that it's our Lord's very footsteps themselves that could have, by his presence, sanctified the land. And it is, depending on how you think of the Holy Land, it is very much actually part of the Holy Land. So speaking of people living their faith in very tangible ways in everyday life, I just wanted to tell the listeners about this couple we met in the south of Lebanon, Musa and Michelin, whose home was destroyed last autumn. The house next to theirs had been reportedly used by Hezbollah to store weapons, and this house next to theirs was hit by a missile. And there was a big explosion, which almost completely destroyed their home as well. And we visited their home. We saw how some of the rooms have been renovated, but many of the rooms are still very much damaged, and the walls are all charred. It's all black, and you see ashes and rubble everywhere. And I remember, as you were translating what Musa was saying, I remember at some point you said that you don't translate that every single time, but he finishes every sentence by giving thanks to God.
Yes.
Which is so incredibly, so beautiful and so moving. At one point he said that there's a 10-foot cross on the roof, which has always been there, which he credited with keeping his family safe, because they weren't actually there at the time of the attack. They could have easily died in that explosion. And he also credited Saint Charbel's intercession with keeping them safe. Like, I guess all Maronite families in Lebanon, they had icons of Saint Charbel, various pictures of him and other saints, and Our Lady as well. And as he was telling us what had happened, he then said that when they returned after the attack and started searching the rubble, they found that there were 2 items in the whole house that hadn't been completely destroyed. And then he showed us these 2 pictures, a picture of the Virgin Mary, and a picture of St. George. So those are the 2 items that survived intact. And he then said to us that he's an army veteran. I think he spent 30 years serving in the army. He had some retirement, some savings. He ended up spending all his savings to rebuild his house rather than just selling it and leaving. Because I also got this sense that people also have a strong connection to the land itself in a physical sense. And it was important for this family as well, that this is the village they hail from, and they wanted to stay there. They specifically wanted to preserve the Christian presence in the area. It just seemed so important to them. And again, ASEAN provided some emergency food aid to this family. You met them before, right? This wasn't your first time meeting them. What was it like for you listening to their story?
It was the first time. I was.
Oh, it was.
Yes.
Okay.
We've met other families, but yes, it was the first time. It was really very touching, very, very touching, because you can imagine a person like Musa, with all his pride. He was in the army, so with all his pride, with all the savings for his retirement, and putting everything in this house and losing everything. So it was really, really touching for me how he was crying. At first, he wasn't crying. He was showing us around, telling us this is what and he wanted to show us the places that he restored more than the places that were destroyed. I don't know if you noticed, but he was telling us this is the living room that we restored, and then he wanted us to sit inside. So when I saw, he was really active, showing us this and this and that. And then when he sat down, and after many questions, he was in tears. He was crying at the end. This strong army man who has been serving for 30 years in the southern area of Lebanon. It means on the border where conflicts are happening on a daily basis. This person who was showing us this and that, he was crying at the end. He showed us really his feelings, but he wasn't complaining. He was crying out of sadness and not out of complaint or injustice. He was crying, but at the same time, he was saying that I'm thankful that my family wasn't here. I'm thankful that the cross protected our house. I'm thankful. All the time he was crying and saying, I'm thankful. It was really touching to see this human being, this fragile human being behind this 2 meters guy, strong guy, to see this vulnerability, but at the same time, this faith. He had the faith. It's the faith that is keeping him alive, technically. It's the faith, not only the food boxes or the sanitary boxes we are providing. It was his faith that he's thankful that God protected his family and not destroyed his house.
Yeah, that's very well said, because that's exactly what I was thinking, that the faith seems to really sustain people there in a very meaningful way, you know. So I wanted to ask a little bit about the youth, young people. How has this ongoing period of war and conflict affected young Christians in particular?
The ongoing crisis have deeply affected young people, because many now feel uncertain about their future due to unemployment, to poor public services, to fragile economy, and above all of that, the lack of security. The Lebanese youth are generally well educated, and education is really high valued in the Lebanese society. So this uncertainty, and especially the lack of security, is pushing the people to immigrate, to search for stability, to search for quality education, better opportunities, to seize a little bit their dreams or what they want to do, and not stay. You don't know when they will blow up. Things will happen. So they search for this stability. This is on one hand, but on the other hand, many other Christians have decided to stay. They are choosing to stay, and they are aware of local challenges. They don't live in denial. They are very aware of the challenges, but these challenges have generated a sense of responsibility and a hope that things might get better if we get to actions. They try to be active in their communities and engage in political, social, charitable work. They try to promote dialogue between different groups. And when we say different groups, it's not only different denomination, but also different political parties, and they advocate for peace. So we can see this. We can see this phenomenon. I can talk about myself. For example, I decided to stay in Lebanon right after Beirut blast. When the blast happened, I decided to stay in Lebanon because for me, it was clearly a calling. So for the young people who are staying, it is a call. It's like having a house with a leak somewhere, and what to do? Should we just leave the house with the leak and go live with the neighbors, or should we try to fix it, knowing it will take time? There will be ups and downs, but at the end, it's our house and it's our country. So you can see that many people have decided to stay, and others also have decided to leave. And now after the Beirut blast, before the Beirut blast, the parents used to oppose to let their children leave. But after the Beirut blast, the parents, I don't want to say encourage their children to go, but they will not oppose to it because they
understand.
Don't. Yes, they understand. They cannot protect their children, and if immigrating will guarantee their children are safe, they will not oppose to it.
Yes, we met quite a few young people who I specifically asked about their age group and how many people they would say they grew up with have left the country. And most of them said around a third of the people they knew, and they were people in their 20s and 30s, around a third have left. But then, as always, there is hope. And I wanted to talk a bit about the Brothers of Beit Maroon, which was, I think, if I have to name one single highlight, one thing that I enjoyed the most, it was visiting these monks, this new monastic community. When was this community actually founded? Do you know how long ago?
It was in 2020 during the COVID.
Just
COVID.
A few years ago.
Yes.
Yeah. I thought it was very, very recent. Mm-hmm. A brand new monastic community. 23 young men. I think most of them were in their 20s and 30s.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And the amount of hope and love and faith and joy they radiate is in itself mind-blowing. They were so happy to see us. And then they asked us to pray with them first thing when we got there. And the monk leading the prayer had an Australian accent. So I went to talk to him afterwards. And he told me that there are actually two of them from Australia in this community. They're not related to each other, but they were both born to Lebanese parents in Sydney. And Brother John told me that he had actually graduated university as an engineer, and growing up, he visited Lebanon a few times with his parents, but the rest of his family were still in Lebanon. And he discerned religious life, and he realized that it was his calling to return to his ancestral homeland and join this monastic community. One other monk in their community was an architect, and among them, they have so many incredible skills, and they managed to build their entire monastery and their church by themselves with their own hands, with very little outside help. Again, it gives this idea of such a profound connection to the land. And also, it was such a special experience because we got to witness the founding, the birth of a new monastic community, which is like living history, because you read about how monastic communities get started in history books, but this is actually happening in our time. So again, you get this sense that the church is growing. People are feeling and hearing the call to live out the faith in new and different ways, which tells me that the Holy Spirit is very much at work, guiding these new communities. And then to hear the stories of these young men who have actually decided to return to Lebanon. And I know young people are leaving in large numbers, but it's just such a beautiful story to be able to tell, right? That there are young people who are actually making the choice to return.
Yes, of course. The history of the Lebanese people, we've always had immigration. It is not something new. We have a monument for the first immigrant who went from Lebanon. It is always like that. But what is really particular is that they return right before 2019 and 2018, 2017. You could see that many families decided to return and to build again their businesses here in Lebanon. So it is not something new for us, not immigration, not the return also to Lebanon. The Lebanese people love their country. We still talk about our country even if we've been 40 years in other places, because we really love this country, and it is a nice place to be. The weather is good, the people are welcoming, and at the end it is our country, so we feel home when we come back. And yes, it's not only to become monks but also families. I know many families who were successful outside of Lebanon. They had jobs and they had everything, but they decided they want to continue their lives here. So yes, it is something in our history that happens.
Before we finish, I just wanted to hear your thoughts on the future of Christianity in Lebanon. And again, just to give listeners a bit of a context, Christianity used to be the majority religion in Lebanon at the time of Lebanon's independence from France in 1943. It was definitely the majority religion, and maybe even for a decade afterward. And now it's estimated to be around a third of the population, I think, Christian. It's still important to point out, though, that there are more Christians than Sunni Muslims and more Christians than Shia Muslims. So Christians still have significant influence.
We can say that Christians in Lebanon are not a minority. It's a democratic country where we have the president of the republic who's Christian. We have the leader of the army and the governor of the central bank. Three major posts in the state, in the Lebanese state, and these three posts are with Christians. So Christians in Lebanon, it's not just surviving as Christians in the Middle East. They are a rock for the Middle East. And even when I went to Syria, I was in conversation with many Christians from Syria. I asked them, what are you worrying about? What are your worries? What are your challenges? And so on. They told me, please take care of Lebanon. Why? Because for them, Lebanon is the rock. Let's protect the Christians in Lebanon, because the Christians in Lebanon having this community here will ensure a certain stability for all the Christians in the Middle East, and not only in Lebanon. So how do I feel about the future of Christianity in Lebanon? It is true that numbers are now shuffling between denominations, and Christians maybe might not be the biggest number in Lebanon, but until now we still have the country. We still have positions. We are still a voice that is well heard in the country, and an active voice that can make changes, can make differences. We have many political parties, also Christian political parties that are active, and we have a very strong church. So I'm not really worried about Christianity in Lebanon, because the church is very strong in Lebanon. The church is not just a few priests and sisters who are there. No, the church. I said that before, and it's the stronghold of the Christians here. The church has institutions. The church is really close to the people, living with the people step by step, their daily lives. We have many new vocations. We have too many too many congregations. We have lots of priests, sisters, and we can still see that Christianity is flourishing in this country. So I would say I'm not afraid about the Christianity in Lebanon. I might be a bit worried because we want the Christians to feel more, or let's say the young Christians to feel more attached to their country and more rooted in their country. But the church is working on that. The church is not sleeping and saying everything is all right. Church is working on this. Church is creating opportunities, creating a good atmosphere for the young people to feel welcomed and to feel really rooted in this country. So I do feel that Christianity belongs to Lebanon.
That's beautifully said. Well, thank you so much for your time, Marielle. It's lovely
Thank you, Amy.
talk to you again.
Thank you.
It honestly was such an amazing trip. I remember the trip and many of the people we met for the rest of my life. So deeply moving and inspiring on so many different levels. So thank you. And thank you to all of you for listening. Please subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform. Please follow us on social media. And please also subscribe to our ACN UK newsletter for latest news straight to your inbox each week. Thank you for joining us.